I'd heard this was happening, but I didn't realize it was to this degree. I mean, the numbers are astonishing.
Billions of birds, and biologists are worried that it's not only birds, there are many large species, many important species disappearing from the planet.
Yeah, well, you know, it is the canary. It really is.
Yeah, literally in this case.
I'm afraid so, and it has to do with the bird population that's dwindling at an alarming rate, Audra. New research finds the number of birds in the United States and here in Canada has fallen by 29% since 1970. There are almost 3 billion fewer birds than there were just 50 years ago.
The alarming die-off outlined in a new paper.
It says more than a quarter of the entire bird population disappeared over the last half century.
In fact, scientists say there are almost 3 billion fewer birds on this earth than there were 50 years ago. CBS 4's Jamie Leary wanted to learn more, talk to a researcher at CSU. And Jamie, he says, yeah, it's time to be concerned.
And he was watching this rapid decline along with other enthusiasts even before this study came out. And he has been on a mission for quite some time to show people why this is much bigger than just birds.
A recent study shows the number of birds in North America has dropped by 29% since the 70s. In Colorado, it means a loss of birds like the warbler or the red-winged blackbird.
The projections are not good at all. And so within the next, I think Audubon said in the next 50 years, it could be completely absent from Rocky Mountain National Park.
It means you'll hear less of this.
Even the sounds of our natural places, they're quieter than they once were. There's no doubt about that.
The bird loss is huge, but to Job, it means something bigger.
It's also an indicator of our health as humans, our health of ecosystems that surround us. And
birds have always been a great indicator species.
these are the canaries in the coal mine that are like sounding the alarm.
Peter Mara, senior author and director of the Georgetown Environmental Initiative, calls it an environmental crisis.
I think this needs to be a wake-up call. It's a horrible situation, and it's about time that people did wake up.
You got to pay attention, right? It's actually happening. And if it's the birds, what's next, right?
All right, moving on to news coming in from Rajasthan now, and it's a troubling one really, where over 10,000 birds have died at Sambar, one of India's largest saltwater lakes.
Though the official toll was 1,500, locals claim the number of dead birds could go up as high as 5,000. Disturbing visuals coming in from Rajasthan.
And the samples of dead birds have now led the Forest Department to believe the cause of death may be something that they still haven't been able to figure out.
But right now, wildlife lovers, bird lovers across Rajasthan and across the world are absolutely shocked with what has happened in Sambar.
There is shock and sadness in Venice, Italy, one of the world's most romantic and beautiful cities.
People wading through the water across St. Mark's Square, one of the most popular tourist spots in the world. Tonight, the mayor declaring a state of emergency now for what he's calling the apocalyptic rising water there.
This morning, another high tide in Venice, swamping the city once more. Tourists stranded on now useless walkways.
They call Venice the floating city. Crisscrossed by canals, for centuries it's been at the mercy of water. Now, though, Venetians say it's getting worse.
Venice floods dozens of times every year. Most of the city is just 4 to 5 feet above sea level. But locals here tell us that this is not normal.
St. Mark's Square is normally postcard perfect. This morning, it was totally submerged.
Floods in Venice are not new, but they're getting deeper and more ferocious.
The mayor declaring a state of emergency, saying the city is on its knees.
Just incredible images tonight.
Famous landmarks like 1,200-year-old St. Mark's Basilica inundated, water flowing through the church.
My life, this was the first time like this.
St. Mark's Square, now a swimming pool. Hotels and shops turned into canals as water rushes through buildings.
Good
Good evening. Mother Nature is throwing everything at Queensland. Severe storm cells dumping massive hailstones, some as large as cricket balls, across the southeast. Thousands of homes are right now without power, all as fires erupt in the wild conditions, with more evacuation.
Australia's fire service chiefs have described conditions as catastrophic. High temperatures, strong winds and dry conditions are making bushfires travel fast.
Stalking Sydney's northwestern fringes for nearly 3 weeks, the fire in the Wollamai National Park this afternoon finally made its move. The huge wall of black smoke reared from the bush, and in its path several properties, including a timber yard and the town of Colo Heights.
More than 80 fires are burning across the state, and on Sunday authorities issued more emergency warnings. The crisis is also expected to intensify on the west coast. Nearly 500 homes have been destroyed over the past week.
I just trying to stop myself from crying. And I'm a man, I'm pretty tough. You know, and you drive out there and just see the death out there. Everything's dead. That wasn't a fire, that was a monster.
Craig Roberts trapped in the driver's seat, giant hailstones pelting his windscreen, a spider's web of cracks threatening to shatter at any second.
Brisbane weather, beautiful 1 minute, the next.
Drivers had nowhere to go, cramming for cover at petrol stations.
Look at all the cars all jammed in.
The afternoon storm, fast and furious, lashing the southeast from the Sunshine Coast to the Gold Coast. Cricket ball-sized hail smashing homes. Blanketing backyards, wreaking havoc on playgrounds and playtime. Destruction everywhere, hitting with such force the roof of the Curramundi Woolworths collapsed. Lightning striking this Moreton Bay home, leaving a gaping hole in Christian Patterson's bathroom. It's been so long since we've heard this sound. But for our drought-ravaged region, it just wasn't enough.
It's the dry season in Zimbabwe, but park officials say this year it's much hotter and drier than usual. Hundreds of elephants and other animals are dying.
We've been through some pretty bad ones. When you see animals just walking along, elephants for example, and they just collapse on their legs, they don't even roll over, they just collapse and die. It's very emotionally moving.
This is Mana Pools National Park, a UNESCO World Heritage Site in the north. People here say the land has completely changed. This is Long Pool, the biggest watering hole in the national park. There's this distinct smell. Temperatures can reach more than 45 degrees Celsius, and even the fish are struggling. There are too many animals competing for scarce food and water, and many are exhausted.
Sydney's water supply has never emptied more rapidly than now, so quickly that zero water is not that far away.
If the rainfall doesn't improve and we consume the amount that we do, we would be out of water completely in about 2.5 years.
Current forecasts suggest Sydney has enough water to last until May 2022.
With the current rate of depletion, we could be in a very tricky situation in a couple of years. We don't want to scare people unnecessarily.
Livestock dashing across red, scorched earth, peppered with dry weeds and shrubs, the ground cracking from lack of rain. The past 3 years, nothing short of brutal, and farmers like Jeff Power, who has land at Orroroo, are more than feeling the pinch.
This reservoir had water at the start of the year, but it's now dry as a bone. Peterborough and surrounding towns receiving less than a third of the rain required to grow enough feed for livestock.
In my lifetime, this would be the longest dry spell I've known.
Sacked Wallabies star Israel Folau has suggested the deadly bushfires ravaging New South Wales are God's punishment for legalising same-sex marriage as well as abortion. Today, Sydney reporter Gabrielle Boyle is at his Kenthurst church where those comments were made in a sermon. Gabby, take us through what he's had to say this time.
Yeah, good morning, Tom. Well, it seems that every time Israel Folau addresses his community here at his church in northwestern Sydney, he upsets somebody, and yesterday's sermon was perhaps his most controversial yet. He took to the podium to tell the congregation that bushfires and drought were punishment for same-sex marriage and abortion. So certainly some pretty controversial comments. Let's take a look at a little of his address.
You have changed the law and changed the ordinance of these things. Look how rapid these bushfires, these droughts, all these things have come in a short period of time. You think it's a coincidence or not?
Of course, Tom, his multi-million-dollar Rugby Australia contract was torn up earlier in the year for other controversial comments about same-sex marriage, and he is currently taking them to court, taking legal action against that sacking.